All right, Morning Juice. Tito Carpenter. Buddy Wells with you. Thanks so much for tuning in today, getting juiced with us. We're now joined by Bill Bender from the Sporting News, as he does every Monday at this time. Bill, we are inching ever so closely to the start of college football. What does your day look like now? Like, what are you doing to get ready for the season? Or is this just time off for you?
Well, it won't be time off with SEC Media Days. I'm not down in Atlanta, but we'll be watching very closely. I think paying attention to Greg Sankey. And then next week, obviously, with ACC and Big Ten Media Day, we'll have plenty to talk about there. And then I wouldn't say off, but it's more everything ready toward week one. We'll have preseason All-American team, more preseason rankings. It's still kind of that talking season. I think today we're definitely probably going to react to what Greg Sankey says, and I'm wondering if he's going to endorse that 5-11 playoff model.
So Big 12 Media Days were last week. Mike Gundy said some stuff about, collectively bargaining with the players. Dion talked about salary caps. Brett Yormark said some things, about not capping the number of teams they can get in. I mean, what was kind of your biggest takeaway that you heard? Because I feel like these coaches now, Bill, are much more emboldened when talking about the NIL front and how they think it should look, maybe more so than we'd seen in the last couple of years.
Well, I think that's a great word, emboldened, because you see Mike Gundy saying the things he was saying, that, basically they're not going to negotiate during the season, and Dion talking about a salary cap. And I think part of that coming out of the Big 12 is they do have a parity conference. The one that had 4-7-2 teams in first place last year, the one that had just one playoff team, probably has the chance of the four Power Four conferences to win a national championship. But at the same time, if you think about it that way, it's like, well, that's kind of what the NFL is. A lot of parity, a salary cap, and exciting finishes. The Big 12 had that. But, college football still kind of runs on the superpowers, the ones that get there every year. And I don't know that that's going to change in our current system.
I read something about that Ohio University had potential discussions, it looks like, with the Sun Belt Conference. Have you heard anything about that? And do you think there's a chance they would leave the MAC?
Yeah, that's another one I'm going to hopefully write about this week, because I really hope it doesn't happen. As you know, I'm an Ohio alum, and I can't get excited about Ohio versus Louisiana Monroe. The travel for a school like Ohio to do all that. Now, one potential thought here is this is the trickle-down effect of realignment with the Group of Five conferences. I know Louisiana Tech might be headed to the Sun Belt. There's going to be some shuffling there. And, I was talking to Ken Carman, the Cleveland host, last weekend, and he was wondering whether this is the beginning of some of these schools that can't really play FBS football going back to the FCS. But if Ohio were to go into the Sun Belt, I don't know how excited I would be with that, because I want to see Ohio play Kent, Miami, Toledo, BG, the Ohio schools every year.
I mean, would that say? I guess I'm trying to figure out why that would be the case. I mean, the MAC has been the most stable league, I think, Bill. Outside of the SEC and Big Ten, you could argue even more stable. They've had some fringe movement, but none of their core characters have moved. No crazy additions. Northern Illinois just leaving, but they came in later. They had some bouts, and you look at UMass and UMass popping in there, Buffalo, like Temple. There's been a little bit on the perimeter, but I can't. I'm trying to struggle for the strategic move of how that would improve the standing, I guess, of Ohio University. Right,
and the Sun Belt, in terms of prestige and money and those kind of things, is not that different than the MAC. I think you're hearing the reported reasons being kind of the MACtion games, low attendance during the week. It is harder to get to a game during the week. For me, it would actually be easier to go down on a Tuesday night than it would on a Saturday. But in that angle, but this is how pays the bills. They found a niche. They get some broadcasting revenue out of that, and it helps this conference keep going. Another conference, though, like we were just talking about with the Big 12, there is parity in the MAC. That's why I love watching the games. The difference between, the top team in the conference, which was Ohio last year, by the way, and the bottom is not that there's not a huge gap. I mean, you got to go out and play every game.
Bill Bender from Sporting News joins us. Do you think that the action, that midweek stuff, do you think that's been, would you label that as a success?
Because on one hand, yes, there's the football every night aspect to it. On the other, like if you're an alum and you're working, it's hard to go down on a Tuesday night at 7, depending on where you live in Ohio. For us, for example, in Pickerington, be a late night getting back. So taking the kids and those kind of things is tough. For the students, it's probably easier to go on a Saturday. But in terms of the niche it's created, and I know in November we can look forward to having the college football playoff rankings, and then you're, somewhere you have a MAC game. I remember last year there was a couple games there's been over the years just an absurd amount of snow on the field in some of these games. It's been a lot of fun to watch, but I understand that's how you get on TV in November. But I'd like for more Saturday games in the MAC at the same time. That's such a bad answer, but it's the problem we're having.
Thing is, Bill, I think you're planning this all wrong. You don't worry about getting back late. You just stay the night down in Athens, and that is really the birthday cake. That's the dessert at the end of the game for you. So that helps solve all the problems there at one time. It's interesting you had brought up that you're talking with Carmen about maybe some contraction. For a long time, we've seen a lot of those Sunbelt schools. I think Kennesaw just came up. There's a handful of schools that are going to be, I think, getting to FBS Division I, status to now 140. I remember that 15 years ago, that was around the low 120s. Do you see this moving the other way? It still seems like there's teams trying to come up and schools that are trying to get that, but based upon a lot of the narratives that are out there, it seems like there might be schools that will be turning back to potentially go to the FCS level.
Yeah, I mean, Delaware and Missouri State are moving up. So once we do this post-house settlement college football for 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to find out who can and can't. Because, between that and having schools, like some of the MAC schools where they have players up to Power 4, I'm going to be interested to see which schools can handle that threshold of money that you need to be successful in this new world and operate the football program and see whether it truly is worth it. But as it stands, we just keep adding schools. We've added, like you said, Kennesaw State and Sam Houston. And Sam Houston's one of those schools that I think's built to, maybe handle it a little bit. But there's a reason why. I don't know if it helps certain schools. Like for Youngstown State, who's been in the FCS, would it benefit them to come up to the FBS? Probably not, because of the schools that they have to compete with in Ohio. That's not saying Youngstown State isn't good, but you can get away with playing a FBS school or two, but I think they're comfortable with where they're at.
Good chatter on this one, Bill. Do you think 5 years from now we'll have a super conference in football? Or do you think it's still just going to be a lot of this, what's going on now? A little bit of shuffling of the deck a little bit?
Well, we've been talking about it for years. I think down the line that's going to happen at some point. I don't know 5 years, though. You look at 2035, 36, I think that's where we might have the next moving around a little bit because of the ACC grant of rights, because we'll have 10 years of this new playoff format. It's always a possibility, but it's kind of the same thing I was saying. We're going to find out with this House settlement which Big Ten schools can handle, that $31 million, and then whatever the number they want to put on top of it, NIL, and then whether or not they can compete. So I think that's what these next 10 years are. And, if there's I've always thought a super league down the line was going to happen. It's going to take a lot of time to get there.
Kenny Dillingham said recruiting is dead. It's the age of retention now. Do you think that's factually accurate in college football?
Well, I mean, and how do you do that? I mean, the places like Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia do that. They retain by, development. You can tell the difference between an Ohio State player from freshman to sophomore year. How many times have we said that? And I think, yes, you've got to work really hard to re-recruit your roster in some ways. And, make sure that the guys have the proper value and not lose guys to the transfer portal. And I think being a coach with the roster management aspect of football is probably, 100 times harder than when you played, maybe 1,000. And that because of NIL and everything you have to do. So they have a point there. And, this week with SEC media kickoff, we've got all the SEC coaches turned into Mike. And like I said, Kirby Smart and, Lane Kiffin and those coaches, Josh Heupel, I'm sure they'll have plenty to say that might reverberate a little bit louder than it did with Big 12 last week.
Bill, you're the man. Thanks so much for the time, buddy. We'll talk again next week.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on, guys. Take care.